What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Wednesday edition of On Q. I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Hit us up on our YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q, our NFL guru, our insider, Lloyd Vance of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029. The Game, part of the Broad Street South Network. Also, one of our contributors on Martinez and Company on Tony Bruno Sports Network, kind enough to join us on this Wednesday. And as we kind of put a bow on the first round of the playoffs, the wild card. We talked a lot yesterday on BYP about Sirianni. Everyone's cleaning out the lockers today. We're not sure yet if Kelsey is really going to retire or not. But, here's the situation, and then we'll get to these games, and then we'll do our preview later on in the week. I'm wondering if the Eagles will take a couple days, fresh wound. Here you go, Roseman and Lurie, and they'll sit back and maybe when they had their exit interview, so to speak, with Nick Sirianni regarding the season and recapping, hey, man, you need to put a plan in place. And if we're not comfortable with the plan in place, then maybe there's going to be some other options out there. Is that something that you can foresee happening, Lloyd? I mean, walk us through that process.
Yeah, everybody I talked to has said that this is locker cleanout day around NovaCare, and they're going to talk to the players. They're going to have their exit interviews, and then they'll move up the chain. And Sirianni is going to have, I guess, his first real sit down with Jeffrey Lurie, and they're going to talk about the situation and atmosphere around this team. Is this fixable after six straight, 6 out of 7 lost, the games lost, and we debated a lot about this, and he better sit down in front of Jeffrey Lurie with a plan because the past history shows it was Doug Peterson, a guy who won a Super Bowl, and only a couple of years later, he's having this same conversation with Jeffrey Lurie. And then Jeffrey Lurie said, look, you need to make wholesale changes on your staff. And Peterson kind of balked at that. And then next thing you know, he's out the door and they're looking for a new coach. So Sirianni, Q, we know he needs to make wholesale changes. As you said, he needs 5, 6 new guys on this staff, particularly at the coordinator position, and we'll see if he's going to make the changes or not. I've always said, and I'll stay with it. I just think the history with Lurie, he's going to keep it.
Yeah, and that could be the case. I know we kind of went back and forth yesterday and last night. It could be the case. But again, all those coaches are out there. It might even be one of those situations where it could potentially be that wait and see type of approach. We don't know how everything else is going to fall into place. As far as the games, look, Cleveland, they were a slight road favorite going into Houston. Everyone was talking about CJ Stroud. Is he going to be able to step up in the moment? D'Amico Ryans, and here you go. And they absolutely clocked the Cleveland Browns. Now they, for their efforts, get the top seed, the Baltimore Ravens. And right now, Ravens are a heavy 9.5 point favorite in that one in Baltimore, the top seed. That's a Saturday 4:30 kickoff on ESPN. But I love what Houston did. They took advantage defensively. Flacco kind of great story, reverted back to sometimes that gunslinger Flacco, a couple pick sixes. That game was never in hand. That game was never in doubt if you were a Texans team. But that's a big win for that franchise, knowing that they have a young quarterback and a very good head coach on the rise.
Excuse me. And this is a young, rising team, and home teams were 5-1 in the wild card round. So I kind of
Yeah.
discounted that. They were home dogs, so everybody was talking the Browns up, but this young team, they're playing without a conscience, Q, and they're playing with house money to be truthful. You have a rookie quarterback who has come in there, galvanized his team. They've done a great job in terms of they're not giving the football away. So they've only allowed 14 giveaways all season. And then the thing is that Turner's game, as you talked about, Joe Flacco, the magic carpet ride ended. He looked like a 38, 39-year-old quarterback. He had those 2 bad pick sixes in that game. There was never a question about it. But CJ Stroud, cool and calm, 16 to 21, 274, 3 TDs, no interceptions, and a perfect rating. So he played very well. And then defensively, they're kind of no name other than Stingley Jr. But this Texans defense can get after some people.
Yeah, they can. They played really well. And again, like I said, I think it's Houston, almost like Green Bay, right? Come on the rise, young quarterback, maybe the changing of the guard, so to speak, in some capacity. Cleveland, for all the injuries, for bringing Flacco off the couch, Stefanski coach of the year, you got to give him a ton of credit. I don't know if it would have turned out any differently if Watson's back there or, if they've got Chubb. It's just a very good season. But I think if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, you're kind of sick to your stomach because you thought maybe this year was going to be different. And I can say the same thing if you really think about it for what transpired with the Dallas Cowboys. We talk about a young team in the Texans, Green Bay with Love and their weapons, and we were getting ready to write off Love. We were basically getting ready to say, look, this is not the quarterback of the future. He's not the answer. He's not going to get it done. And what does he do? He goes in there, hostile environment, Dallas, in a game that was not even remotely close. And I'll tell you, man, I know this kid has taken a lot of criticism. I like the way he carries himself. And I think if you're looking at Jordan Love's numbers as a whole, 32 touchdowns, 11 picks, he's gotten progressively better as the weeks have gone on. And he's playing some of the hottest quarterbacking position right now. And listen, it was a tough matchup going in for Green Bay on the road. Obviously, they're going to have their hands full once again this weekend. But I just think that they're playing with house money. And when you're a young team and you don't know any better, sometimes you can kind of upset the apple cart. But great credit to Green Bay and what they were able to do. And if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan, I mean, we'll get to them in a minute, but talk to me a little bit about Green Bay and what they were able to do.
Sure, and you got to talk about the positive side of this game first, and that's the Green Bay Packers. The youngest team to win a playoff game since 1970, and in this game they allowed no sacks and they had no turnovers. So if you're talking about a team that was cool, calm, and collective, as you said, they're playing, they're relaxed, they're going in there. LaFleur's done a great job with this young roster. Brian Gutekunst did a nice job drafting all these young players, turning it around very quickly. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, he may have been the problem. They get rid of him. And Love, he did have his lull early in the season. I had a couple of games late in the season that he didn't play real well in, but he's played great going into the playoffs. This team's riding a 3-game winning streak. And as you said, he had the same exact numbers as CJ Stroud in this one. 16-21, 274 yards, 3 TDs, no interceptions. And these young players around him, they're just believing. They're just going out there, getting open. Dobbs had a great game, 6 catches, 151 yards, and 1 TD. And then the Packers just were not pressing, Q.
No.
And then they also had a game plan. A big thing was Dallas in terms of their defense. Dan Quinn, a lot of people are talking about him having an opportunity around the league. Well, Dallas too often played DBs in formation. You saw they had a lot of safeties rather than linebackers. And then the Packers just pounded that formation. In particularly Aaron Jones, who's played very well since coming back from injury, 21 rushes, 118 yards, 3 TDs in this game. Their line was just dominant. And Dallas, what can we say, Q? It's an ultimate disaster. It's a situation where everybody's questioning Dak Prescott, Mike McCarthy. I start at the top. Jerry Jones, obviously, he's allowed all this to take place, and they're a regular season team. As we always said, a paper champion. They look good on paper, but you
Why you can't take them
lose that
serious
game at home.
anymore? I can't take
Yes,
them
you
serious
can't lose
anytime.
that game. You can't lose that game at home. And it looks good. Okay, 48-32. Well, guess what? That score is, come on. It was 48-16 or more for a
It's so
large majority of
bad.
this game. They had no shot. A lot of empty calorie stats that Dak threw up there at the end. And it's very quiet coming out of Jerry Dome the last couple of days. And I fully expect McCarthy is probably going to be let go, and Jerry Jones going another direction. But the thing is, Jerry Jones has to allow somebody
Yep.
to come in
Yep.
there and run the show. And that was the problem with Parcells. I think Parcells had them going in the right direction.
Yep.
But Jerry Jones, let's not forget, he's the GM, he's a meddler. And what coach is going to allow him to tell him what to do? He guys needs to step back.
But that going in. I mean, let's be honest. If if I said to you, hey, Lloyd Vance, you got an opportunity to coach the Dallas Cowboys, it's not like you're going in blind. You know exactly what to expect. So does that mean a Belichick wants full reign, Harbaugh, a Grable, a Carroll? Maybe they go a different route. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Um, but I look at this Cowboys team right now, and I think it's one of these situations where um, you can't really figure out, who is, who's really running the show, if that makes sense, right? Like who is really running the show if I go in there and I'm thinking to myself, all right, give me let me bring in my own guy, and we know it's Jerry running the show. Let me rephrase that. But knowing that Jerry is running the show, how do I approach that? Meaning, like, my mentality has to be, I just have to deal with him, right? No matter what.
Yeah, he's going to give him a big contract and the money and everything, but it's that say so. And luckily for Jerry Jones, he has his son Steven Jones has kind of really stepped up. He's the CIO of the team, and there's been spots where he said, "Look, Dad, just be quiet. We're not drafting Johnny Manziel." That was one of the he that's example of Jerry Jones just trying to assert his power and saying, "Look, you're making the wrong decision here." The roster is very good, but obviously defensively they got to clean some things up. Is Van Der Esch coming back? A lot of questions there. I think a big thing, Q, in terms of he really should have hired general manager. They have McClay in house, a guy who's very well respected around the league. He was going to interview for a lot of spots that are open right now, and he was kind of blocked from them. And I think give him the opportunity to have that title, build his team, and then there's a question around Dak Prescott. Do you give him that extension, and is he the guy to lead his team? Dak Prescott now 2-5 in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's the other issue, right? The quarterback making all that money and everyone's talking about Dak. You almost get to the point where, can you really win with Dak Prescott? Do you believe he's that franchise quarterback? Maybe during the regular season, but come playoff time, he always has this inability to not rise to the occasion, right? Rise to the challenge. And it's the ability to just basically go south. And we saw it again, bad plays, bad throws, bad decision, pick six. He's just not a playoff caliber quarterback. So with that being said, I keep doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result. That's flat out insanity. I mean, can you see a scenario where McCarthy and Dak Prescott are not with the Cowboys next season?
And no, I don't. I think Dak will still be there as a quarterback, but I'm just not sure about McCarthy. And McCarthy's 1-3 in the playoffs as a Dallas head coach, and you wonder, has he lost his locker room? I've heard rumblings that some of the players were his message was kind of waning with them. So, you know, I could see a scenario where McCarthy doesn't come back. With Dak, they're going to give him the opportunity. And NFL Man of the Year, he always does very well for Dallas in terms of the marketing and in the community. But it's a results on the field, Q, and everybody knows Dallas is the richest franchise in the National Football League and maybe
Yep.
all sports in America. But there comes a point where 1995 is a ancient history. All those titles and everything, that's a long time ago. And just something is not working with this franchise. Yes, they've won 12 games for like the last 2-3 years, and they won the division this year, but such a sour taste for them and their fans. And they were a heavy favorite in this game. And you also got to tip your cap to the Green Bay Packers, who went in there and they just didn't give a damn. They just said, you know what, we're just going to let it rip. And these young guys really played hard. And then Dallas kind of rolled over very quickly.
Yeah, they did. I mean, we kind of saw that over the weekend. I mean, obviously, you saw with Cleveland, you saw with Dallas, you saw with the Philadelphia Eagles. Buffalo, listen, we know about Pittsburgh. We talked about Tomlin. I think Buffalo is going to be in for a hell of a fight. We'll document it and highlight it and breaking down later in the week with Kansas City. But Josh Allen, man, playoff Josh Allen. Everyone's kind of dissecting all these fake slide runs that he's done in the course of his career, man. He's just so smart and athletic. Like, to me, if he's juking the guy and you bite, so be it. But I believe that they were able to save the head coach's job. Remember now, they fired their offensive coordinator. They got rid of Dorsey. They insert another coordinator. McDermott wants to take over to some extent, input in some of the play calling. Here we go. They've ripped off 5 to close out the season. And now they've got Kansas City. Weather's going to be ridiculous again with the snow. Now there's talk about maybe not having fans in the stands. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Enough with this nonsense already. But that being said, Buffalo is kind of flexing their playoff muscle. I also believe that they know that their window of opportunity is closing.
Yes, and they were thoroughly prepared. They were ready to go. And the Steelers, as we said, they were the little train that could come in there. And they did not have TJ Watt with the knee injury, and that was a very big loss for them. And then the quarterback position, let's face it, Mason Rudolph, he's just not a guy. He's more of a backup. And Pickens has not played well all season. He's been griping, and there's some questions around Mike Tomlin. He got that team there. He won his 10 games. You say kudos to them, but obviously it was a homecoming game for the Buffalo Bills, a get-right game for them. And Josh Allen did a nice job, 203 yards, 3 TDs, no interceptions in this one. And it's going to be interesting because I know we'll preview the KC game coming up, but in his last 5 playoff games, he has 17 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. So he is taking care of the football, doing a nice job with it, running as well. And you're seeing Cook involved as well. So the Bills are a very dangerous team, and they take care of business against the Steelers.
Yeah, they did. I mean, the Steelers, listen, nice stories you said, but at the end of the day, they didn't really have they couldn't really rev up the engine, so to speak, to kind of compete with Buffalo. I mean, smoke and mirrors when you think about it. And granted, I had them making the playoffs coming out of the AFC North. As you know, I had them, Baltimore and Cincinnati. Obviously, it's them, Baltimore and Cleveland. Cleveland and the Steelers are home. Baltimore sits and they wait Houston. Then you had, I thought, really the most, the Miami game. We talked about it. I just thought the weather was going to be an issue. Kansas City's a different animal. Unless Miami gets a home game in 85-degree weather in South Beach, I'm sorry. They're not built to be a cold weather team. They're just not. They've had some injuries. I was shocked that the offense was stymied as much as it was stymied. I played the under in that one, and I also like Kansas City in the points. But again, Kansas City's a different animal. You've got the veteran guys. You've got Kelsey. You've got Reed. You've got Patrick Mahomes. For that reason, that's one of the reasons that I really liked, and that reason alone that I liked Kansas City. But I'm wondering if you're Miami right now, the questions down there. I've been listening to Sports Talk in Miami, and they're talking about, is Tua the franchise quarterback? Can you win with Tua? And I don't know. Listen, both teams had to play in those conditions. Do you think Tua is a franchise quarterback?
He's a franchise regular season quarterback. We just have not seen him get it done in the playoffs at this point. Obviously, they had not been there in a while, and last year he was beat up with the concussions and everything, and they were out of their element in this one, and going and play against Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, that's tough enough problem, and then the weather conditions, as you said, they weren't thriving, and then you got to tip your cap to this. This Kansas City defense is just tremendous at this point. They hold them to 7 points. Spagnuolo has done a great job with this unit. Nobody's really talking about them. And in regular season, they only allowed 294 points, which was second in the league. They're on a 3-game winning streak. Mahomes finally got some good play out of one of his receivers in particular. Rice, 8 catches, 130 yards, was allowed to go to him. He had a touchdown as well. Still, they had some problems with the drops, and uncharacteristically, it's Jason Kelce. Travis Kelce dropping the football. We'll see how they do. They're going to have to clean some things up because this is a huge matchup for them. We know Mahomes is 2-0 in the playoffs versus Josh Allen, but everything seems to be ramped up, and KC has to go on the road for the first time in the playoffs in a long time.
Yeah, a little housekeeping. Ron Rivera says he still wants to coach even as a defensive coordinator. We don't know yet on Jason Kelce, Eagle Center, on his future quote when it's time. And also Tomlin tells the Steelers he'll be coach in 2024. Van Pelt out as the Browns OC. That's not really a surprise as well. And you mentioned Mahomes and Allen. A lot of people are talking about Brady and Manning. Then you had Stafford and Jared Goff. Listen, I told you I love the Lions. I was so happy for Jared Goff. I thought that was going to be one of the most or more entertaining games. I just thought that was a game where you would have felt bad if the Lions would have lost that game, right? I mean, look at their history, 57-91, and then you have to wait all these years later. Man, I'll tell you, they've got such a really good offense, but to me, that game was won with their red zone defense because the Rams couldn't capitalize when they got into the red zone the other night. And I thought Jared Goff played exceptionally well. I thought Stafford played well. I just thought the Rams, there were a couple big plays and the Rams were able to make that. And you get your first playoff win in 32 years and you do it at home. That's really a remarkable story. I love what Campbell's building. They've got some big time playmakers. And look, they're at home again against Tampa Bay. I mean, it sets up, and again, we'll talk about it later in the week, but the Lions, I told you, man, that's my NFC champs representing the NFC. They beat Tampa. They're in the NFC Championship, and anything can happen. But what impressed you the most with that Lions squad the other night?
Yeah, it was a great game, Q. And they made sure that they held the Rams, with bend but don't break, and the Rams, they made them, they stopped them on third downs and made them kick field goals in this one. It's a 1-point win for them. And what I liked about him is Goff was just poised out there. I don't know if it's because he's playing McVay and he wanted to get revenge. 22 of 27, 277 yards, one TD, did not turn the football over. They ran the ball when they needed to, and then they took advantage late in the game, just dominating a Rams defense that was young and tired. They ran the ball down their throat in that game. They made sure they had 3 TD drives of 75 yards or more to close that game out. So the good story. You do feel happy for their fans, just like we talked about Cleveland. Another fan base that's been downtrodden for such a long time. The Lions, you could see their fans, people that have been coming to games for years. They were just so happy that they finally won a playoff game. I thought the Rams played well. Puka Nacua, in particularly, 9 catches, 181 yards. He and a TD. He was a warrior out there. But it's just Dan Campbell's time, and I know one of the players on the Lions, and I've known this Ballard for years, and they had video from in the locker room, and they just showed, the excitement of this young. They're young, and they're excited. Another team that's like, you know what, we're playing with house money. Now they're 13-5. Yes, we knew they'd take a step forward, win the division, but nobody thought they'd be hosting the playoff game. And with Dallas falling down, now they get that opportunity. They're going to play Tampa Bay, a team who they've already beaten in week 6. So it's going to be an interesting proposition to see if they can keep this thing going.
All right. Lastly, before we close it out, I mean, look, Belichick really flirting here with Atlanta, but then he's going on the record, or the reports are he wants to coach a underachieving yet talented team. I mean, pick your litter. Isn't the whole NFL underachieving, and yet they have some talent with these squads? Fill in the blanks here. Can you see Belichick, Washington, Atlanta? I don't know why you want Atlanta with that quarterback. You need a quarterback unless they go after Russ Wilson or Kirk Cousins. Who knows? You got Harbaugh, the Chargers. We talked a little bit about that last night on Martinez and Company on Tony Bruno Sports Network. I mean, where do you see the best fit for Belichick would be?
That's an interesting question, Q. It could be Atlanta, because even though they have Fontenot there as general manager, I think Belichick could go in there and be able to run the show. He'd be allowed to pick his players, get his staff there, all his cronies, guys like Josh McDaniels coming to be his offensive coordinator, and he'll get his staff going and try to get those 14 wins to catch Don Shula. So it could be there. It could be Tennessee. But I think the biggest domino right now, was everybody's waiting to see where Jim Harbaugh is going to go and what's going on with Michigan. Harbaugh also talked to the Chargers. He talked to the Falcons. So we'll see where he ends up. But I fully expect Belichick to get another opportunity around the league. His resume and, that panache that he brings, some owners going to give him that opportunity.
All right. He, of course, is Lloyd Vance, at Lloyd Vance on social media. X. Give them a follow. Don't forget, during the week, host of Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, part of the Broad Street South Network, joins us on Q, BYP, and of course, Martinez and Company, Tony Bruno Sports Network. Later on in the week, we will dive into the divisional round. Everyone always says Wildcard Weekend's the best. It is, but then you kind of separate the boys from the men, the divisional round, and who knows? Maybe now until tomorrow or Friday, there will be other heads rolling or coaching carousel or movement all over the NFL, because we typically see it this time of year. But always appreciate a couple moments of your time, pal. Thank you.
Q, thanks for having me on.